All right, we're back. Well, we finally got her home. We got our new Volkswagen back home, got her into the shop here. You'll note the outside is wet there. It's raining here in central Alabama, which is not an uncommon thing for this part of the world. Thought I would run through this car, give it a good looking over. I've already done that, of course, and you know, we'll kind of run through this thing together and talk about it, and tell you what I like about it, what I don't like about it, and tell you about my experience with purchasing this car. I purchased this car from Carvana. Why? Well, they had a bunch of them. I was actually shocked. I was kind of looking around for these cars, these diesel Volkswagens, these Dieselgate 2.0 cars. Thought to myself, you know what? I'd like to have one of those. So I got to looking around, and evidently Carvana found a bunch at auction, and they just snatched them up. They're all over the Carvana website, and they're selling like hotcakes. Not the best deal in the world, but you know what? I like the color. So let's go ahead and go through this thing and see what we have. All right, just a little run through on the interior of this car, and I will have to say that the interior of this car is in immaculate condition, except for one or two minor details that we'll go over in a moment. The door skins look really nice, except for some tiny scratches from fingernails in the past. That's not a huge deal. You got electric windows, and they're heated as well. Electric door locks and mirrors, obviously. The seats are what you'd call leatherette. It's not leather, it's leatherette. So anyway, you have a power seat back, and then you have the standard VW pump for going up and down, raising and lowering the seat. And you have a handle down here to pull up to move it backwards and forwards. Cruise control is over here, up and down on the volume and radio. You can set these. I think you can customize them a little bit. And then here's some more media stuff over here as well. Channels, talking on the phone, answer, hang up, that kind of stuff. DSG transmission, 6-speed. Basically, it's a manual transmission with a couple of clutches, and it's automatically shifted for you. It becomes readily apparent as you're driving this car if you are used to or have driven a manual transmission in the past. It's like there's like a secret ghost man sitting in the right-hand seat shifting this car for me. So here you go. These are the paddle shifters on either side, up and down. You can put it in sport mode and shift it manually if you want. Got your trip reset right there. Standard speedo, RPM gauge, temperature gauge is your information center. And let's go ahead and just power this guy up. Foot on the brake, press the button, boom, you're up. Cut on some lights here so we can see what we're doing. The dashboard looks pretty nice. Let's go ahead and turn on our entertainment center. Turn that down. We don't want any copyright infringements. There's your band. You can cycle through the stations here. You can move it back and forth. It's a touch screen. And this little sensor right here detects as you move your hand closer, it activates the screen for you. And of course, here's your media. Starting media. Come on. Starting media. I think it's trying to sync to my phone. Connection interrupted. My S9 Plus user is connected. Okay, so it did connect to my phone, which is in my pocket. Okay, so that's good. Here's the phone. Okay. And you can make a telephone call. I'm not going to say the words right now because it'll activate and make a call. Voice. There we go. These are the commands. I'll do that again. Those are the commands that you can use. So let's get rid of that. And then, of course, mute. And there's sound.
This function cannot be operated with voice operation. Please continue operation on the screen.
That's hilarious. Okay, let's go back to media and get out of that mode. Menu, media, radio, car settings, telephone. There's sound. There's the settings or the setup, display, date, time, blah blah blah. You know, it's just standard stuff modern cars have nowadays. Standard automatic, or it's not automatic climate control, it's just a standard air conditioning and heater. It's not automatic. AC button, rear window defog, recirculate, temp, fan, and vent settings. Over here in the glove compartment, you have a CD player, amazingly. And it's air conditioned as well. It's vented. You can turn this vent up and down. You can either turn it off or turn it up. I think it's because this thing makes a little heat. That's just my assumption. And then there's an SD slot in here. You can put some music on the SD card, play music that way if you want. Also has a standard media connector for Volkswagen, which is down in there. I'm not going to show it to you. It's extremely inconvenient, in my opinion. They could have done better on that. There's no USB ports in this car, but it is 2015. I would have thought by 2015 that would have been standard fare for USB ports in all cars, but I guess I'm not. I guess I'm wrong. This is the thing that my wife cut her hand on yesterday. This is this piece of trim right here. You see that? It's very thin and very sharp. This piece, this escutcheon, I think is a proper word. I've got that on order, and it will be in at the Volkswagen dealer tomorrow, and I will pick that up and replace that. The replacement procedure is basically rip it off the car and put the new one on. It's pretty simple. I watched a video on it. Cup holders, cigar lighter. Yes, I called it a cigar lighter because that's what they used to call them. Got a 12-volt port in here. This thing here is extremely beefy and well built. My MK4 Golf is not. It was pretty flimsy, but that one I like. It's pretty nice. So this is sort of it's a TDI S model. It's a base. I guess you call it a base model. You got the storage compartment up here, various stuff. Look at that, SOS. I guess that's kind of like their version of OnStar. And there's a wrench. I guess there's a setup there. There's some information. I have no idea what this stuff is. I'll look it up in the book later. You guys may know already. I'm not really interested in pressing those buttons. And then you got lights and stuff over here, reading lights. There's the rear light. And we got some really nice sun visors. Lit mirrors on them. That's pretty cool. I guess we can shut her down, which is really hard. I like that. I like that a lot. I did this whole spiel earlier without a light, and in the background there's a light behind me, and it was so dark it was worthless. So I'm doing it again. Anyway, so one thing I do like is the heavy-duty rubber floor mats down there. It came with those. Leatherette in the back. The back seat has never been sat in. I think the person that owned this car before me, it was used as a highway cruiser. I don't think it never had any kids in it at all. If it had kids in it, all of this stuff in the back would just have scratches and tears and smudges and stuff all over it. Got air conditioning vents in the back. Pretty nice. Got a fold-down armrest with a couple of cup holders in it. And I believe that hole right there opens up. This is kind of cool. Volkswagen. Now, this is kind of tricky. Okay, watch. If I just do this and then try to open the... Well, never mind, it did it that time. All right, let's try again. So if I go like this and hold it, and then, you see that? It locked back, right? You can't do it that way. So let's bump that. You got to do it fast. See there? Kind of tricky, but you'll get the hang of it. All right, got a nice Volkswagen cargo protection system. This is a mat, but they think it's a system. I'm going to call this a system from now on. Anything I don't understand, I'm going to call it a system. You got these latches here. I think you pull those down and the back seats flow down. You got a AC outlet over here. It's 115 volts. Can't really see it. We need some lights. You know, I need better lighting in my shop. Anyway, so you got an AC outlet over there. It's 150 watts, it says, and a standard 12-volt automotive outlet there. And the spare tire is under that. It's not very exciting at all. Moving around to the other side, you press this in, have your diesel fuel there, and your diesel exhaust fluid there. I mean, you know, it's kind of the base model. It doesn't really have all the fancy features on it. Oh, I think, and this right here is the, you know, if you're locked in the trunk and you want to get out, you can reach your finger up in there and unlock the tailgate, I think. So it's the S model, the base model. It doesn't have a sunroof. So, and now where's those scratch? Here's the scratch that Carvana made on it. Right here, okay. That's the worst part of it right there. I know that it looks worse than it is on camera, and there's some minor blemishes up here, and there's a very, very slight scratch open on the other roof rail over there. All right, let's pop the hood and take a look at what powers this 2015 Golf Sportwagon. So what we have is a 2-liter model EA288 turbo diesel from Volkswagen. The infamous Dieselgate engine. Pretty standard fare, really, for the engine compartment. Air filter, we'll check that here in a little bit. Battery has a little protective, sort of a felt cover around it. And it's kind of like a battery blanket, really. But that's all right. Looks like our fuse box here, easy to get to. That appears to be the ECM. I'm making a guess as to what that is. And we have a sticker back here from Volkswagen. Not sure what that is. That's interesting. I might read that later. Some sort of information from the factory. I'm assuming this is brake fluid. Yep, that's brake fluid. Back there, looks to be full. Washer fluid, engine oil fill. And here's a diesel fuel filter. I must say, this is quite a substantial fuel filter mount, and it appears to have a Volkswagen branded filter on it. I did some records research on this car, and it appears that it spent most of its life being serviced at Volkswagen dealerships, which is, you know, that made me feel good about it. And then, of course, we have the overflow reservoir for the cooling system over here. Looks like our low pressure side air conditioning port right there. Everything else is covered up by this big cover. So let's see what we have here. All right, doing that with one hand is a little problematic. The underside of this has got foam rubber all over it to, I guess, muffle the sound. Looks like our accessory and timing belt cover over here. And man, has this thing got the cooling hoses. Look at these cooling hoses. Holy cow, we're going to have to keep an eye on that. So you got, these are hard steel lines, and I think some of this is fuel. This one here, off here, must be the feeding the high pressure rail. Yeah, there it is right there. You can see where it goes to the injectors there. And then this one, I'm not sure what that one is, that middle one. We'll figure it out later. And they have some insulation around these wires here. Now, I kind of like seeing that. That's nice. A little bit of, they actually thought about a few things. Hey, let's put some wires next to the engine, but we better wrap them in insulation to keep the heat away so they don't deteriorate. So I kind of like that. That looks good. I don't know what that stuff is back there. Relays, switches, who knows? There's some electronic gizmos in here. There's one. What is that? Some kind of sensor. Have no idea what that is. Now, apparently, from what I've researched, on the back side back here, on the exhaust side, you've got some pretty sophisticated exhaust treatment and particulate filters, and I'm assuming that's where the DEF fluid comes in. I guess it trickles into that. That looks like the O2 sensor right there, if I had to take a stab at what that is. There's a couple of sensors. There's one here and there's one there in the exhaust stream. But this one had the fix from Volkswagen around the 13,000 mile range. They went in and adjusted the computer. I think they basically said, okay, just quit cheating on the emissions test. Okay, just stop it. I think that was the fix, really. That's it for the engine bay. Let's go ahead and get on with our oil change for today. All right, so let's take a moment out here to tell you about my experience with Carvana. If you are not comfortable with shopping for cars online, chatting with people online, texting people and getting responses from automatic bots, in other words, automated text responders, and then finally getting in touch with somebody. If you're not comfortable with all of those things, then don't buy a car with Carvana, because that's what you're going to get. Carvana are not car people. They are not. They're just salespeople. It's just a big company, all right? They're not car people. They just buy a car at auction, get it out the door and sell it. Customer service is good. They'll Johnny on the spot. They'll get in touch with you. They're good. They're good at that. But they don't know anything about cars. They just don't. especially when you get an oddball car like a Dieselgate Volkswagen. A little bit of evidence on that is as follows. When we took possession of this car the next day after I test drove it, I immediately noticed that above 30 miles an hour the car started to roar quite badly. It sounded exactly like a wheel bearing. It was just wah, 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 like that. And I'm like, oh boy, okay, here we go again, right? So I contacted Carvana and they put me in touch with Silver Rock, their warranty people. I found a good European car shop here locally, and long story short, ultimately it was the tires, thankfully. So they're working on filing a claim and getting the tires replaced. And why was it the tires? Because Carvana put 2 cheap Chinese-made tires on the front, have no idea what the brand was, and 2 Bridgestones on the back. That combination on this car, wow, it was awful. It was just terrible. So it sounded exactly like a wheel bearing. But thankfully, we got a brand new pair of Nexans, which are made in South Korea, I believe, and they are now the Volkswagen OEM. Good tire. So, and they sound great, and they're very comfortable. So I like those tires. The engine oil level was too high. Still is. We're going to do an oil change today because of that, okay? Carvana filled the oil too high, and the car was giving an error message. Reduce oil level. That's unacceptable. The oil level should be full. Not low, not too high, full. Unacceptable. The key fob batteries had to be replaced. Right after I took possession of the car alarmed. It said the key fob batteries were low. Okay, $5. I changed them out. Not a huge deal. But it seems like it'd been something they could have checked. You know, maybe standard fare for getting a car on auction, replace the key fob batteries just straight away, especially if it's 5 or 6 years old. Carvana dropped and scraped something against the roof rails. So these black roof rails back here, it's not bad. It's actually, I could probably just ignore it for the rest of my life. But they did admit it when I took possession of the car, that they had dropped something, and there's a very minor scratch on both roof rails. So whatever it was lying across the top of the car. They told me to simply contact Silver Rock, which I've already done. I got a letter from them, and they said, find a shop, we'll take care of it. Okay, fine. So that's a very minor thing. I'm not really that worried about it. Last thing, cracked center console trim piece. This is a common Volkswagen issue with this specific model of, I guess, MK7 really. There's a little decorative titanium colored strip around the gear shifter. It cracks and it kind of pokes up a little bit. When I finally got the car registered and got a tag on it yesterday, my wife takes it to the, she goes and runs errands, right? I knew about it, but I didn't tell her. I didn't think it was a huge deal. What's the first thing she did? She shoved her hand right up in the middle of the console and cut her hand right here. Came home with a Band-Aid. I was like, there's that. That's a kind of a Volkswagen deal. It is a used car, so there's some things, that happen. But I put that one on Volkswagen, not really on Carvana. Carvana did highlight on their ad the 2 little problems in the body. There's a ding right here in the driver's side fender, and there's a little ding back here on the top right there where somebody dropped something on the car. That's an old dent, you can tell by looking at it. When I have a body shop look at the roof rails, I'm going to get an estimate to repair these 2 little things here. I think we can do paintless dent removal on that. I think that'll work out okay right there. But the other one I think will involve some painting. All right, so that's my beef with Carvana. Purchasing the car was easy. Signing the paperwork was easy. It's all online. You just click, 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 and you're done. So that part was fairly simple. But again, I'm going to reiterate, if you're not comfortable with doing everything online, it's probably not for you. Now, typically what I've done in the past when I buy a car, I like to establish a relationship with the previous owner. I like to haggle a little bit. Sometimes I don't haggle at all. If I know I'm getting a good deal and I like the car and I know it's, a hot tomato, I'm gonna just give them the money if I know I'm getting a good deal. But in general, I like to establish a relationship with the previous owner, haggle a little bit. It always helps to ask for a lesser price. There's nothing wrong with that. But with these online malls like Carvana, Driver's Way, CarMax, there's a few others, the price is there, that's what you pay. And the reason why I went with Carvana was they had a lot of these cars. They had them. I needed a car right away, and that's the reason why I went with it. All right, that's enough with my beef with Carvana. All right, we just fired up our little 2-liter EA288, whatever that means. Gonna let it run for about 5 minutes. Get a little bit of heat in her, and then we'll do an oil change. Of course, I'm not shouting. I think you can tell that the engine is pretty quiet, and in the cabinet, the interior of the car is pretty quiet as well. Out of curiosity, let's see what the difference is when we place the engine cover over the engine. I'd say it decreased the sound a fair amount. I just placed it on there. I didn't put it down firmly. Let's lift it up. I'd say the insulation does its job. So a functional cover, not just a cosmetic one. All right, I'm gonna let this run for a little bit, and up next we'll do an oil change. All right, give you a little tip on putting your Golf Sportwagon on car ramps. Move the car to the beginning of the ramps, come to a stop with your foot on the brake, head hanging out the window, watching what's going on. Let your foot off the brake. The car, in its idle form, will simply creep its way up the ramp. And when she gets to the top, hit the brake. Don't be chicken. Let her creep on up by herself. Then hit the brake, put her in park, shut her off, you're done. If you're in idle and it's creeping up by itself, and I got a little scared here, and I stopped, and then when I let off the brake, it started to roll backwards. I guess it's whatever, the computer, transmission, blah, blah, blah. Right? It's a DSG, right? So it's a standard that's shifted automatically for you. So it'll roll back down if you stop there and then take your foot off the brake. And then if you try to give it gas and make it go back up, it'll just be a big old mess. Okay, just forget all that. Go to the beginning of the ramp, put your foot on the brake, take your foot off of the brake, let the car idle up the ramp, and when it gets to the top, brake, park, off. That's the way you do it. All right, let's get on with our oil change. All right, we've got to take the cover off underneath the engine. We've got a T25 to get this first fastener off. All right, I've got 3 more fasteners along the back side of our cover here. So I got a, looks like a T45. Looks like a T45 fits in there. It's a little loose, but I'm not sure if there's a metric equivalent or not. And I'm not going to get on YouTube and look it up. So let's get these other bolts off. And someone in the past, the 3 bolts in the back, they're supposed to look like that, right? With a permanently attached washer. But somebody lost one. They put a bolt in, and the bolt basically walled out a hole in the plastic. So the bolt kind of fits up inside there. It was hard to get the socket on it. And it's a used car, so that's kind of stuff you have to put up with. So I'll need to find the right bolt and put in there. All right, so let me get this cover off, and we'll proceed on with our oil change. All right, pardon the hairdo. I just got out from underneath my Volkswagen. Nothing like a good old 71 Cadillac for a parts run for your 2015 Volkswagen. So pretty much I'm going to go ahead and replace the hardware holding the cover on the bottom of that car. A couple of the small bolts are missing. I think there's 8 small ones. I believe it was a T25, and then the 3 larger ones are T45. They're all torque stuff, but and I'm going to go get a new oil drain plug for it as well. I called the Volkswagen dealership, and they have everything I need. So we're going to get down there and get the right hardware instead of trying to rummaging around at Napa, which I like Napa, don't get me wrong. Or O'Reilly, which I like O'Reilly, don't get me wrong. But I'd rather have some Volkswagen hardware on that car. So it looks like a couple of the oil changes, you got a guy underneath there, and he lost a couple of bolts, and he stuck a different one in there, and a couple of them are kind of rusty and all that kind of stuff. We're going to get us some brand new hardware, so you stay tuned. We'll be back in just a little bit. All right, yours truly just drove 50 miles to the Volkswagen dealership to get the right bolts. I was told at the parts department that these 3 bolts holding on the back of this cover right here, 1, 2, 3, are actually supposed to be replaced every time you do this, remove the cover. And this is the correct oil drain lug bolt. The only reason I thought it was a Torx is because the websites that I was looking at had a Torx on it, but that's probably just a generic. And we also got some of these new little ones to hold on to the side of the cover as well. So I got 2 oil drain plugs, 3 new large ones, and 8 new small ones for $20. But at least we'll have the correct hardware holding the cover on the bottom of the car. Well, I guess all good things come to an end eventually. Looks like the oil filter is here, and it's a little oily. Possibly someone didn't get the gasket on good or something. Anyway, okay, let me get the proper size fastener on there and twist that off of there and pull that out. All right, so to make our life a little easier, we're going to take this electrical connector off. Found another guy on YouTube doing the same exact thing. All right, I'm not going to say that was easy because it wasn't. Probably wasn't even necessary. But at least we can move this connector out of the way a little bit. And you can tell that no one's actually taken this connector off to change the oil in this car. I think they just left it on there and let the oil drip on it, to be honest with you. Anyway, that's a 13. That's the oil drain. We're going to drain the oil out of the oil filter housing. And once that's drained, we're going to take the filter housing off with a 32. An 1.25" socket will work just as well. So that's what I'm going to use. All right, I'm going to call that a design. I'm going to call that poorly designed. Let's just leave it at that. So there's our plug we took out of the oil filter housing. And we got our connector out of the way at least, so it's not getting filled up with oil. So at least that's something. All right, let's let that drain out a little bit. Then we'll put our plug back in. And we don't need to let this drain a whole lot. We just need to drain enough to where we wouldn't make a big old mess. So I'm going to go ahead and slip this plug back in there. And then we'll get our 1.25" out, and we're going to remove that oil filter housing. All right, that's what that looks like. It doesn't have your center thing sticking up out of it like it does in the other car, in my MK4 TDI. Let's see, where is this filter from? Product of Korea, it says. Actually, the oil in this car was very clean. The only reason I'm changing it is because I don't know what oil is in the car, and it was overfilled. Thank you, Carvana. All right, let me get the new filter in here, get some new O-rings in this thing, and screw it back into place. All right, as usual, you have a couple of O-rings. You got 2 in the kit. You got the big one and the small one. The small one goes in the drain plug on the bottom of the housing, and of course, the big one goes around the housing itself. So, all right, I'm gonna put the drain plug back in the housing and put the housing back on the car. All right, time to add some oil to our car. We're going to go with good old Liqui Moly 5W30 for gasoline and diesel vehicles. And the place to go for this would be Napa. This is where I got this. I walked in there. They had this jug and another quart, and they had the filter. It had everything in Napa for this car, so I was pleased about that. None of the other parts houses around here had this oil in the... One had this oil, but they didn't have enough, and that just won't do. Before I add this oil, I will have to say that so far, this oil change... Let me clean out my funnel. This oil change has been probably, as far as oil changes go, the only oil change that was harder was my RV. The oil filter placement on this car is ridiculous. The only car that's worse than this is the first generation General Motors front wheel drive cars, where you had to go lie under the car and reach up and around the axle shaft and get to it. And it was just, if you've never worked on one of those cars, then, you know, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, to be honest with you. What, do you need a PhD to open the oil thing? Is this really necessary? Okay, I guess it is. Yes, I put the oil drain plug back in and torqued it to 22 foot-pounds. And the oil filter housing is back in, snugged appropriately. Oh yeah, that was another thing. Whoever changed the oil last in this car put the oil filter housing on with way too much force. I was amazed with how much pressure I needed to exert to remove it from the car. Well, that's pretty oil. I like that. I'm not too thrilled about this spout thing though. What is that? Does that come out? Does that come off? Why is that like that? Oh, let's go ahead and check our oil. Man, I look grungy today. It's like I've been crawling around underneath a car. Just out of curiosity, where does that put us? 5 liters actually puts us about a quarter way up of the operating range. So we're going to fill it up to the top of the operating range, and then we'll crank the car. And then we'll check for leaks. If we see no leaks, we will turn the car off and reattach the bottom cover with the new bolts that we got from Volkswagen. And then we will crank her up, get her off the ramps, and that's about halfway up the range. That'll be plenty for now. Hopefully we haven't overfilled it. The whole reason why I was doing this. All right, so that's nearly the top of the operating range. That's plenty for now. Check it. Look, that's a nice little quarter turn. Click. I like that. That's nice. All right, let's fire her up and get some oil circulating. Make sure we don't have any leaks. And let's see, I tightened the oil drain lug to 22 foot-pounds, and the oil filter housing is on with both the O-rings, and there's a new filter on, and we just added oil. So I know this sounds silly, but it's the first time I've ever changed oil in this car, so I just wanted to be thorough, that's all. All right, let's raise the door. We don't want any asphyxiations. There we go. That door's getting a little noisy. Open sesame! All right, so I don't see any alarms complaining about oil pressure or anything like that. And I don't see any problems. All right, I'm going to call that good. I tell you what, a man could grow to become fond of push-button engine starting. All right, I'm going to go ahead and put this cover back on and get this thing off the ramps, and we'll be back with you guys in just a few minutes. I went and changed clothes so I didn't get my seats greasy. Whoopsie. Yes, I made a mess. I'll clean it up later. All right, let's go ahead and check our oil again. Let's see how good of a job we did. Always use a lint-free cloth when checking your oil. Okay, buddy, whatever you say. My rule is always use the cheapest rag you can find to check your oil. That is about 1/4 to 1/2 up the operating range. So let's put the rest of our oil in. You know, never changed oil in this car before, so we're going to be cautious because the person that changed the oil in the car last time wasn't. You know, it's about 3/4 away up the operating range, so that's perfectly fine. I put about 6 liters in, I put just a tad bit less than 6 liters in. So I'm going to go with that for now and run it for a little while and then check it again and see where it stands. All right, folks, oil change is all done, and I think that we're going to call it a day. Appreciate you guys stopping by the channel. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And if you'd like to be notified whenever I release a new video, don't forget to click that little bell down below. You guys know what it is. So you guys have a good one, and remember to enjoy maintaining your VW properly.